Lately, there has been yet another controversy concerning using AI in creative writing. This time it's with the SFWA, which is the Science Fiction Writers Association. And I used to belong to them. I'm not a current member, but I pay attention to these kind of things. And there are impassioned speeches on both sides of the issue where writers are arguing what counts as generative AI, like is it your spell checker, does research count, and then, how much is too much to use, what should disqualify you for winning an award, and so forth. A lot of people have different ideas of where to draw the boundary line, and I'm going to go ahead and weigh in and be public about my opinion here. I truly don't believe that generative AI belongs in the arts, in the creative arts, and in innovation. Now, it is a great tool for research, and I think it can be used like it does have good uses, but I think a lot of these controversies are missing a fundamental understanding of what AI art and writing is. I'm going to say it right now. I mean, it is not machine generated. It is human created. All of that art is human made. All of that writing is human made. It's mixed up. It's blended together. It's anonymized. The copyright information is stripped away. So nobody knows who the original creators were. The reason people say like AI art looks so good that it's hard to tell from what a real artist would have done. In many cases, that is actually true. And it's because it's all human art. It was made by humans. It was scraped. It was ingested. And it was then generated with varying degrees of 3 artists were used versus a data set of millions. I think when it becomes very, very blended together with many, many things, what you have is something that looks very generic and there are kind of tells that people can see. Whereas if it's blended together a certain amount of this and that, maybe it's a lot harder to tell. There's always the tells are difficult. AI detectors are notoriously faulty, and I think humans are as well, and with good reason. It's all human-made art and writing. And when you have an output that is basically art, writing, code, whatever content, all of human knowledge or whatever it's scraped, it creates a vacuum where the end user can then step in and say, I made this, when they really didn't. So now anybody can step in and be like Elon Musk and take credit for stuff that other people made, their wins, their mastery of some kind of art, and say, now it's me that's doing it, sure. And, there's a few fools that believe them. There are definitely people, even in the creator community, that think this is a good thing. They'll argue that it's making the creative process more accessible, and I'm really glad that people in the disability community are pushing back on that, because there's nothing less creative than prompting a machine to generate something that other artists have made for you. A person who commissions art knows that they're not the creator of that artwork, and prompters should be aware of the same thing there. I think we do need to be clear that AI art is not actual theft, it is plagiarism. There is a difference. People, when they're arguing against it, they sometimes say, oh, it's theft. And the data sets are scraping and copying the work, but this is intellectual property theft. It is copyright theft, and it is plagiarism. Okay, so I do think there are good non-creative use cases for it, particularly for research. When your prompts are just dredging up the enormity of human chatter, internet noise throughout the universe or whatever, you're not dredging up people's hard-won art and mastery, coding skills or writing skills. You are just dredging up internet noise, conversations people have had. I don't think there's as much of a moral problem with that. And in that case, the LLM, the large language model, is actually replacing the moribund mess that Google search has become. So in those cases, if you're using it for spell check, for research, for a start to fact checking, you always have to fact check the output that it creates. But it can be a good place for research. The reason this is not some egregious use is because it is not stripping away art, writing, coding, mastery that people have made that are behind copyright laws. It's not intellectual property theft. Spell check, for instance, the data set that tells the LLM where punctuation should go, where grammar and spelling should go. These things are commonly agreed upon. They're somewhat common knowledge among editors and so forth, and it's not copyrighted material. Chatting with Claude or Gemini or ChatGPT, that's all good for self-teaching as long as you're wise enough to fact-check everything. It's sort of like asking a hive mind of humanity your questions. And I think that's where a lot of the wonder comes in, and that's why a lot of people are excited about it. However, there are also extremely good reasons why creative types, artists, writers, and I'm going to include creative programmers as well, are not thrilled about what this is doing to the arts. And, I believe the United States has been a country of innovation, of innovators. This is where a lot of inventors are. And, it's also kind of been a leader with creative arts as well, with filmmaking and games. And I think that these basic plagiarism machines are going to change that. Those copyright protections, like legal protections for innovations, for intellectual property and all that, is the reason why creators feel safe putting their work out there and not seeing it stolen in the United States. In countries where copyright is not legally enforced, repressed, and so forth, the innovators kind of have a brain drain. They flee or they're repressed. And so now with the advent of generative AI, we're seeing top-notch programmers not want to share their code publicly. We're seeing top-notch artists not want to share their portfolios online anymore. And I think that's just the beginning. People are going to become much more reluctant to innovate. In an environment like that, fresh ideas stagnate and a society and culture is going to stagnate. So I see nothing but bad things on the horizon for the intrusion of generative AI into the arts and the creative arts. It's ludicrous that we have thought leaders even in the creative arts cheering this on, or just standing back and letting it happen. One of the asinine arguments I've seen made is that, what the AI is doing is just like human creativity, just like human inspiration. Okay, let's talk about why that is absolutely not the case. Newbie creators do tend to learn by imitation. When you are starting out as an artist, you might trace things. I am both an artist and a writer. So when I was 12, I had a little horse statue and I would copy it from every angle. And that's kind of how I learned how to draw horses. I learned how to write somewhat by reading a whole lot of novels and copying the style of some of those authors. And then I was called out on it in a workshop and people were like, you write a lot like Stephen King. And I was like, oh, it's noticeable. And yes, it is. When you are starting out as a creator, you do learn by imitation. But as practice becomes mastery, you find your own voice and your own style, if you stick with it long enough. And then you start creating the things the world hasn't seen before, new versions of those things. Bringing new things to the table as an artist or creator, which I think a lot of us do. AI is not a newbie creator just learning the ropes. Like, it has taken the works of masters, blended them together, filed off the serial numbers, stripped away the IP, and anonymized it. When a singular master does something like that, where they're very blatantly paying homage to somebody else, we call that paying homage. They're still respecting the source material. The viewers of the art can see who they're paying homage to, and they know, like, it's an in-joke almost, like people know what it is. The respect is there. They're still respecting the original artwork. The AI is not doing that. It's anonymizing it and not respecting the original creators whatsoever. It's like they don't exist. It's making them invisible. And it's empowering non-creative people to just do this on a massive scale. Strip away the credit, strip away the respect for the artists, and make it as if they don't exist. Now, are there actual individual creators that do this as well, kind of like shady huckster types? Yes, there are. I have talked to a few in my life, and, I get a little sad when I talk to somebody and they say, what you should do is just copy. Just copy what someone else is doing and maybe change one little tiny bit of the window dressing and make it your own. Haha. And, that's not what I consider creative work. You could call it fanfic, but I think in some ways it's even worse than that. No, I write because I want to bring new ideas to the table. I want to explore things that I don't think are being explored, things that I don't see being written. That's why I'm writing. And we could have a whole other conversation about why originality is being derided and kind of like made fun of these days, which I find extremely sad. As if, all the ideas have been had, all the inventions have been made. What a weird way to see things. But, I guess every culture has always thought we were at the end of times and doomsday is right around the corner and every idea that's ever been had has been had. I don't believe that. I think there's still plenty of new ideas that could be talked about and had. And if we all just repeat this rhetoric and believe it, I think that's a sad way to live. I'm not the only one who would like to see fresh ideas and new things. I definitely see people talking about that as well. So there are lines between IP theft, homage, and originality. Those lines are a little blurry. People are going to argue about exactly where they are. And of course, plagiarism and all that is as old as novels themselves. However, AI is enabling that to happen on a mass scale, and I think it's eroding, like I said, the protections that artists and creators have in America. Without that, this country is going to stagnate as far as innovation goes. Now, are there limits to what generative AI can do? And I think there are. It's great at scraping a single page, a single image, a piece of code, and blending all that together. But creating something that's like a synthesis of many things, and that's like an epic work, a very linear story or something like that, where we're talking like a giant epic series, a film, a large-scale video game, things like that, that require, an orchestra, like things that require many people or a synthesis of many skills together. I don't think AI is anywhere near generating those sort of things yet without, a huge amount of guidance from skilled workers. I continue to write epic series myself. However, it can definitely generate art. It can do memes, it can do little lyrics and doggerel, haikus and things like that. It's good at that. I think that's a net loss to the creative arts. Again, I want to just stress the stuff it generates is not machine generated. It's human generated, blended together, copyright stripped off, anonymized, but it was all originally human made. And there's another big issue that I think a lot of people are glossing over and not really talking about, and that is the fact that AI is trained on very low wage overseas workers. I think many of them are in Kenya. So there's like this huge sort of like uncredited labor pool going into the stuff it generates, as well as the huge amount of mastery that artists and writers have achieved, and it's scraped that as well. So yeah, it looks impressive because it is the culmination of a lot of human mastery, a lot of human effort, years of blood, sweat, and tears. I would never lose sight of that. I mean, I wrote a whole novel series that's kind of a big rant against slavery, and that's all about freedom. Stripping away the intellectual property rights of people, that's going to have a huge dampening and chilling effect on originality, creation, innovation, and I think that's a net loss for everyone. I know I'm just one voice among many, and I just wanted to put that out there. That's my stance on it.